Hey, oh, it's the bovine again. All right, so we're looking at Shadow Priest today. I was going to work on the warrior on the beta. Wanted to try out one-handed or single-minded fury versus Titan grip. Haven't done that yet. Got caught up realizing that the dungeon journals on beta are pretty much done. So I'm like, all right, I want to go through and make my best in slot list. And for anybody that's coming hard off of BFA, well, more along the lines of like the Titans or the Titan forging and the war forging, where you don't ever really have a best in slot. Well, having a best in slot, I mean, sure, you had best in slot back then. Like, this is the one you want, whether Titan forges or war forges or not. You still go after certain things like the Harlan's dice. You just always went after that, depending on your class, obviously. But what I'm excited about is actually doing the math on it, figuring out how much rating equals what stat or another. I went through, I stripped down, as you can see, I stripped down my my Shadow Priest on beta to being bare bones naked, got the base stats that he came with just for being level 60, and did all the math with the stat weights at level 60. So what I came up with is basically crit and haste are pretty much equally important, and then mastery and versatility are equally important, lower tier than that. Obviously, with how they're doing PvP, you want to probably prioritize. I mean, if it depends on your play style. Personally, me, with how much that I would say probably do a mix of crit verse and haste verse gear. I can't really tell you which. It really depends on you, because if you think about it, if you're proccing instant mind blasts, your haste ain't gonna matter. You know what I mean? Mind flays though can channel faster with more haste. So I mean, it depends on how you want to do it. You know what I mean? So as far as PvP goes, your secondary is always going to be verse and shit. In some cases, probably your primary would be verse, because the 2 set bonus for the trinkets is going to be 40% bonus versatility from all items. So that's like the PvP stat. Now there are still items in PvE that are dropping with versatility on them, and you can go through, and there's actually a surprising amount of them that it's almost like you can do dungeons to get ready for PvP. I don't know. I didn't include that in this list because I primarily gear out for PvE first, and then I can start journeying into PvP afterwards. And I generally, when I start going to 5-mans, I don't get rid of any gear. None at all. So I don't disenchant nothing. I keep it all until I figure out what's the absolute best, or I get replacements via PvP. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of items, but you can freeze it and read this off. This is just going through using crit and haste as your best primary and secondary stat, and going through every dungeon for all the slots, except for trinkets. I did not do trinkets because trinkets are a little freaking wonky right now on the beta, and I almost guarantee you half of them are going to get nerfed and the other half are going to get buffed somehow. So I'm just leaving them alone. I'm just leaving them alone. Way I figure, I never get rid of any gear anyway, so if a trinket drops for me, I'll just hang on to it anyway. Now granted, this is normal difficulty to start with, okay? So factoring in if you want crit to be the highest, which generally speaking, this is all the haste crit gear here. There isn't like, well, I think it might be different, like if you're looking, where is it, the main hand? Or no, not the main hand, the chest, right? So the chest, you have an option. You have higher crit or lower crit, or a higher crit, lower haste, higher haste. I have an option with the chest. Most other slots don't give you that option. If you want haste and crit, you're kind of stuck. So, I mean, you can probably work it in if you find something that has a little bit more one than the other. The basic math that I did, it's roughly, I believe, rounding up 10% secondary stat increase from normal to heroic, and then from normal to mythic, mythic 0 is 20% secondary stat increase. Now, when you're only talking like 23 haste, it really isn't that big of a deal. But when you look at the final stats, all this here, I tallied it together. 415 crit, 214 haste, 40 mastery, 97 versatility. Your character comes with a 5% at level 60 base chance to crit, 1% base chance or 1% base haste, 4% base mastery, and 0 versatility. So the secondary stats would look something like 16.8% chance to crit, 7.48 haste, 4.57 mastery, and 2.4 and 1.2% verse using this. Now, if you want to mix it up, you can try, but I believe it's going to come down to a mix of crafted gear, whatever legendary you end up with, if you want to use haste as the primary stat there. But even then, I believe, let me double check here. Chest. There it is. I believe, yeah, primary and secondary stat, or the two secondary stats on the legendaries are equal. So 58 crit, 58 haste. So it kind of is what it is there. Now, for those of you wondering how I made this list, well, first things first, I went through and I made sure I figured out the stat weights, right? So if you're going to do this on your own for another character, oh God, I got to put all my gear back on? I don't want to have to do this. Oh, I almost want to just remake a whole guy. There we go. I clip this out, but I just do these things in one long spiel, so you guys are gonna have to deal with it, or tune out. It's fine. But hopefully that list works out for you. If you end up leaving now, hopefully that list works out for you. I don't believe they're going to do any more modifications to anything in the beta as far as gear goes, so let's cross our fingers. But anyway, so basically I looked here, right? So critical strike 306. That gives you plus 8.74%. So I took 306. That's how your rating. That added up from all this 306, and I divided by 8.74, and I got how much rating equals 1% crit. So that's how you get your actual weights for figuring out how much you're going to have at the end. So now if you guys wanted to make a BIS list of your own, that's what this the journal is for, man. Easiest way to do it, like you go, all right, you're home right here, you go into dungeons, go to the other side, make sure the loot tab is clicked, make sure your class is for Shadow Priest, right, or whatever your spec is, make sure the difficulty is on whatever you're looking for, normal, mythic, whatever, and then pick your slot. Now if your slot here doesn't exist within this dungeon, it won't show up here. Now here's another thing too, like if you go to, I don't know, another one of these, there's going to be stuff missing because not every single dungeon drops every single slot worth of gear for a certain spec or class. So like if you say, all right, you just want to start looking, make sure there's no bosses selected and the loot tabs shown, and you'll see all the loot from all the bosses in this window. So you can just mouse over and say, okay, there's crit versatility. That'd be a good chest piece if you want to head for PvP immediately, right? So then you go down to Halls of Atonement, and you mouse over, there's the crit haste chest. And you can see underneath where it drops from. You got a Plague Fall, there's no chests there. Necrotic Wake, there's no chest there. Theater of Pain, there's one chest there. That's crit mastery. Okay? So that's how you do it. You just go from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon and keep on selecting different slots and figure out where your primary and secondary stats sorry. Know your primary and secondary stats, and then just go down the list. Now, I will say though, primary or secondary stats, they do have a tax now. After they get past a certain point, there's DRs on how much benefit they give you. So I don't have the exact math on that. I just read a Wowhead post a while back about how they were doing that. It's a good thing they did it. Let's make this clear, because a long time ago Blizzard said they wanted to make primary stat, like in my case it would be intellect, stronger. You know, primary stats matter more than secondary stats. That's how they wanted it for a long time, and so far it seems like that's exactly what it is. These don't matter as much. They just, you know, complement your playstyle a little bit. And I'm telling you, as a playing a Ret Paladin, I am glad that haste isn't as huge a deal as it used to be. Don't get me wrong, it's still going to be a big deal. It's still going to smooth out the spec. But back having to hit a 28% haste cap or whatever it was, 26, can't remember what it was back in Legion and back in early BFA, having to hit that haste cap just to do your rotation without staying there looking like an idiot for 2 seconds because there's nothing to press, that's depressing as hell. So not having them as big of a deal makes classes play a lot smoother. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Hope it worked. Hope it works out for you. Where'd it go? There it goes. If this list, like I said, take a screenshot, whatever, compare. It's a good starting ground. And the nice thing is, if you're doing normals, you can look for this gear. And then when you get to the heroics, you can, obviously every step up, it's the same gear. Just depends on your difficulty. And this is just from 5-mans. Now there's comparable item level gear being crafted that you can upgrade. Like I said, there's World Quest gear that's comparable. But just as far as that goes, know your primary, secondary stat. And when you go into dungeons, just keep an eye out for these certain ones. It seems like for Shadow Priests, what I'm probably going to be maining, Spires of Ascension and Halls of Atonement are going to have most of my stuff. So I'll be spending a lot of time in those dungeons. Anyway, y'all have a good time. Drink your milk. Moo!